There's a blessing I say whenever I light one of my candles. O God, as light comes from this candle, may the blessing of Jesus Christ come to us, warming our hearts and brightening our way. February 2nd was the celebration of Candlemas, originally the ending to the Christmas season. It was also a time the faithful brought their candles to be blessed. The bright light and the warmth of the flame reminded the people that they were halfway through winter and halfway to spring. As I prepared my candles for a blessing, I remembered a saying of Benjamin Franklin: "Wish not so much to live long as to live well." Marge is a dear woman in my congregation who is a reminder how to live well. When I visited her in October and asked her why she wasn't painting anymore, she said she didn't feel like it. But then a few weeks later, when I visited her again, she had 5 paintings already done. I called her a regular Grandma Moses. Yes, this mural is of a Grandma Moses painting, and it is right in my own backyard. And I couldn't believe it when I first moved up here that I was living in the very place that Grandma Moses called home. Her real name was Anna Mary Robertson Moses, and she started painting when she was 77. She didn't stop until she died at 101, and she had 2,000 paintings in that time period. She reminded me that growing old doesn't mean giving up on dreams or giving up on life. Growing old is just another opportunity to continue to shine brightly and let God continue to work through us. I first heard of Grandma Moses when I was in 3rd grade, and I overheard my grandmother and my mother talking, and my mother said something like, "Oh, well, she could be the next Grandma Moses." And I inquired, "Who's Grandma Moses?" And my mother explained that she was an artist who started late in life and was very successful. And that story always stuck with me. And I just loved the idea of someone later in life never giving up on their dream and not letting the world say, "Oh, you're too old for doing that." Candlemas was on Friday, February 2nd, and the candles have been blessed. But Candlemas is also a day on the church calendar in which it marks the presentation of Jesus in the temple. It's in the temple that we get a story of 2 older people who never let go of their dream of seeing God's light in the world. Those 2 people were Anna and Simeon. And I really wish I could find figurines of Anna and Simeon to include in my nativity scene, because they are a key part of the birth narrative that we have. And in fact, they're like the last 2 key characters in the Christmas story to appear. Anna and Simeon, they waited for the promise of God, for themselves to see the promise of God. They had this dream, this desire that they would see the light of God before they died. They held on to that dream, and it didn't matter how many years went by, they kept believing that it would happen. Now, the scripture tells us that Anna was widowed for many, many years and she never remarried. And yet every day she kept showing up to the temple, believing that her dream to see God's light would come true. And then Simeon as well was an older man, and he knew that he would not depart this world until he saw the light of God. They model for us the hope we have no matter how old we are. And so February 2nd tended to be the older date for the end of Christmas, when everything needs to be packed away, all the Christmas decorations. But I keep out the stable that my father made me, the rustic little wooden stable where I would put my nativity scene in. I keep it out all year round because it's my reminder when I'm feeling hopeless that This too shall pass. Hope will be born again. So Grandma Moses, starting later in life, is also very inspiring. And can you imagine my surprise when I was interviewing for a church job in upstate New York, when I was driving through the towns to get to the church, that I saw this big mosaic of Grandma Moses's painting on one of the buildings. And I just didn't realize that I was being called to an area to minister where Grandma Moses lived. That was a God moment for me, to realize that God was calling me to an area where, as a little girl, I heard about Grandma Moses, and now here I was right in her own backyard. A great reminder as I get older to keep on dreaming. She was a feisty woman. If you read some old interviews, she was filled with a lot of pep. Once told a reporter that the reason why she started painting was that if she didn't do that, she probably would just keep raising more chickens. She also began painting after the death of her husband because she had to stay out of trouble. I would have loved to have known Grandma Moses. So this time of year, when we're getting closer to spring, because February 2nd, not just Candlemas, but it's the Celtic beginning of spring, and the countdown begins. We're at that halfway point between the winter solstice and the spring awakening. And so this is the time of year where I feel like I need that reminder the most, to keep on dreaming, to never let go of hope. We're almost there. Winter is loosening its grip. The sun is beginning to shine again. And we have to just remember to keep showing up to each day, because we don't know what God has planned for us. Now, speaking of age, the other day, I actually forgot how old I was, could not remember. So it got to the point where I had to actually sit down and do the math. Well, I thought I was 55 going on 56 this year. And I'm thinking, well, no, maybe I'm 56 going on 57 this year. And that startled me. I'm like, wait a minute. I was a lot happier with 55 going on 56, but for some reason that number 57 really made me stop and just I got sad about it. I know that sounds silly, but I actually was startled by that number. 57 for some reason just seemed really daunting to me. And I always said that I was going to age gracefully, but for some reason I find myself recently mourning the loss of youth. And I never thought I would be one of those people. I've always lived my life with, it's just a number. I don't want to remember how old I am. I want to just keep on living and dreaming. That's when I realized that when we age, we are at risk for forgetting how to dream. We think that dreams are for the young people because they have the whole future ahead of them. And I think that's wrong. We have to always dream no matter how old we are. And I know for myself, if I stop dreaming, my heart will stop beating. That's how important dreaming is to me. Dreaming is the very thing that gets me up in the morning. It makes me excited to try something new, to learn something different, to think about the possibilities. And yet, though, when we get older, we begin to allow the world to chip away at those dreams. Are you looking for property that is bigger than what you have now? That's too much for you to take care of when you get older. Do you think you should be looking for a smaller house because you are getting older? You think that you should be on one floor because you are getting older. I still have a dream of finding a house that was built in the late 1600s and maybe a little bit more out into the woods. But the world around me questions my dream of that. You're paying down the mortgage now on your house. Why would you want to take on more financial burden? Why do you want to live more out in the woods? You are getting older. You might need medical help, which is true. There's being sensible. But again, for me, When I stop dreaming, that's when my heart will stop beating. I'll live my life thinking about the possibilities, no matter how crazy they might seem. It gives me eyes that are young and fresh to see the world filled with options. What if Anna allowed the sensible world to say to her, Anna, why are you going to that temple every day looking for something that just isn't there? You know, you've been a widow for a while. Why don't you just get married again and live your life? Stop wasting your time going to the temple. If Anna listened to the sensible world, she would have missed Jesus that day that he was presented in the temple. Simeon, too, if he allowed the sensible world to say to him, why are you doing this? Why are you holding on to that dream of seeing something as elusive as the light of God? If he listened to the sensible world, he too would have missed Jesus. The other day, when I went to finally visit the house of Grandma Moses, which is in my own backyard, I realized that her son has continued to paint in the same kind of fashion that she painted, and he has his own gallery, and he calls it Mount Nebo. I found that very interesting because Mount Nebo is the mountain that God brought Moses to before he died, to look out at the promised land. Moses never got to enter into the promised land, but God took him high on the mount and said, look, you could see it. You're not going to enter into it, but there it is. That's when I realized why it is so easy as we get older to just give up on dreaming. We sometimes feel like we don't have time to achieve that dream. We have to remember that it's okay if you don't achieve that dream. Because sometimes achieving that dream isn't as beautiful and powerful as we have envisioned it to be. But many times it's having that dream and taking the steps towards it that makes life beautiful. Those steps are filled with moments of success, moments of failure, moments of great hope, moments of great despair. And if we continue to pick ourselves up, if we allow ourselves to keep thinking of possibilities yet even imagined, that's where the beauty of life really is. We're going to be entering soon into the season of Lent, and I am so excited about this new season, which takes us to Easter, because it's a time to really step back and to pray and be still and to allow ourselves to give God the brokenness, to give God our hopes, to give God everything, to finally really surrender and then let God lead us. If I ever stop dreaming, that will be the day that my heart stops beating. And it doesn't matter how old I am. It doesn't matter how old you are. Never stop dreaming. Anna and Simeon are perfect role models for us to keep hanging on to the promises of God. And remember, Grandma Moses didn't start painting till she was 77. May this day, your life, paint this world with beautiful colors, colors that only you could dream of.